Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is session number 392. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are once again. Great to have you with me. Thank you for joining me. Now, there are an increasing number of really solid content producers here in the UK talking about personal finance. I mean, I've been doing this for more than 10 years. And when I started, there wasn't many more than just me, kind of a lone voice. Not quite, but, there's hardly anybody doing regular podcasts or YouTube or whatever about personal finance. But that's changing, which is great and has changed a lot over the last 10 years. And this week, I'm talking to one of the prime movers, really, in the personal finance content creator community here in the UK. And that's Andy Webb of Be Clever With Your Cash. That's the name of his blog. And the Cash Chats podcast. So looking forward to chatting with Andy. After my conversation with him, as usual, I'll look at a review that's been left, announce what we're going to be talking about next week. But remember, as ever, before any of that, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my good friends at 7 Investment Management. They've been helping me out here on Meaningful Money for ages, and I'm super grateful to them for enabling me to keep going. Really, certainly couldn't have built this to what it is without their help. Everything I'm looking at, all the kit, all the technology has been really enabled by their support over the years, so I'm super grateful. Definitely check them out. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Okay, Andy Webb has been producing content for quite a few years now on his blog, latterly on his podcast, so maybe that you've already come across him. Today, Andy and I chat about some of the basics of personal finance management, including switching utilities, choices when it comes to banking, plus the rise of the UK money blogger and the community of the same name that Andy has created to serve those folks. So enjoyed chatting with Andy. I hope you enjoy the conversation too. Remember, notes and links, they're at the show notes, which is the only link you need to remember. meaningfulmoney.tv/session392. meaningfulmoney.tv/session392 is my conversation with Andy Webb. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome fellow finance nerd, fellow podcaster, and he's much more of a finance blogger than I am with the Be Clever With Your Cash website and the Cash Chats podcast. Andy Webb, great to have you with me, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm well, Pete. Do you know what? I was thinking about this. I feel like I know you because we've been talking like over the years on Messenger and things. But I actually think it's the first time we've spoken face to face. Is that right? Because I've watched you, listened to you, and vice versa. But having a conversation, I think this might be a first.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's something I've sort of long understood about social media and all this sort of stuff. You really do feel like you get to know people, and then you finally meet, and it's like, we've had this conversation, surely. But then you think, no, we actually never have met face to face. But it's good that it's happening now, bud. So it's great to have you on. Thank you for joining me. So this is a bit of a sort of wide-ranging chat. Really, so that's cool. You have definitely different expertise to me in the area of finance, different focus. So it'd be good to just get some of your thoughts on some things. But before we do that, can you just give us a little bit of a backstory, man? So who you are, what you do, how you got to this point, I think, just so that we've got some context for the conversation.
Yeah, so I started off, I was at the BBC for a long, long time working on all sorts of different productions and a bit of a stint in management. But it was one of those things which I'd always wanted to do it, even since I was little. Like I found this book from at school, like primary school, age 5 or something. When you're 25, what do you want to do? And I wrote, I want to work for the BBC. That's what I put. So we got to this stage. I always wanted to do it, but it wasn't really working for me. There were lots of fantastic things about it. I still love the organisation, a lot of what it does. But personally, I didn't feel fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So I managed to take voluntary redundancy, and that gave me that kind of basis to really, really think about, what do I want to do? What do I love doing? And my wife pointed out to me that I was really good at helping friends and family with money. And I was really interested in the kind of consumer side of things. And in a way, it was a hobby. It's a weird hobby to have, isn't it?
Another feeling.
And I had never thought, because what are your hobbies? I'll say, I love the cinema, I love Crystal Palace Football Club, all this kind of stuff. They're the things that I would think of as things that I do. But actually, it was a really, really big thing. So I kind of started looking at what I could do in that sphere. And originally I thought I'd move into coaching or something like that. Mm-hmm. But as it happened, I set up the blog. I had a small stint at Money Saving Expert as an intern. Okay. as a sort of 32-year-old intern. They were used to 21-year-olds straight out of uni, and there's me coming along. Did that for a bit, set up the blog, and then that led me to go into the money advice service to run their blog. So I've had this kind of sort of spell where this hobby, this thing I was interested in, slowly became my job.
Yeah.
And very, very lucky that it's now gone. I'm full-time on the blog. As you say, I've got the podcast as well. I did a show for Channel 5 called Shop Smart, Save Money. And it's, yes, I am now a full-time sort of freelance personal finance journalist, blogger, podcast host. I love it. I like you, I will keep doing this until the day I drop. I feel so, so lucky that I can help people with their finances. And yeah, so as you say, just really, really enjoy what I'm doing every single day.
So if you were to sum up the sort of approach that you take on, your blog and on the podcast and stuff, and the people who you're most wanting or trying to help, how would you sum that up?
I think, it's very important to me that when I sort of talk about money, I'm talking about stuff that I understand. And I said, as you said, we're both money geeks, money nerds. We like this stuff. But what I'm not, you say we do different things. So I won't be talking about investments or pensions on a regular basis. I'll talk about it maybe in my journey and what I know about them. Mm-hmm. I'm much more about your household finances, your banking, your savings, managing your money. It's not a sense of the wealth building. I think it's directing people where they can go to get that really important information and learn about that. And it is vital.
Yeah.
But it's really about how can you get the most value from your money. Yeah. So you've got your money, you work hard to earn it. How do you make sure it's going as far as you can and giving you that freedom to do other things?
You're right. It is vital because it underpins everything else, doesn't it? Because it's those sort of root level skills and understanding that free up money to be able to do other stuff, save for the future, help your kids through university or whatever. So it is crucial. I sometimes, wonder how people find me. Obviously, there's tools to sort of help that, help you understand what people are searching and stuff like that. I wonder what you would say for somebody who's just, perhaps they just wake up, whether it's January the 1st or whatever, and just think, I really do have to start getting my head around this sort of stuff. So many of us cruise through life. Cruise is way too positive a word. Sort of very often just sort of stumble through life, just kind of doing our best because we're not taught this stuff effectively at school or college or university. So I imagine some people just think, I now need to get a handle on this stuff. So what would you say would be a starting point for somebody who's never really thought about their personal finances before? What is the first things, or are the first things that they need to address?
It's really interesting this because sadly, the first thing that people need to do is often the last thing they want to do. And it's just taking a kind of that proper look at your income and your expenditure. And I hate to say it, but it's making a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. But people go, oh, that's so boring. I really don't want to do that. Or the other problem, that barrier, they think, oh, I'm rubbish at maths, so I can't do it. And it's just this turn off. They just don't start. And sadly, it's not the sexiest message out there, is it? But no. You really, really, you need to know what you've got coming in and what's going out. Once you've got that, and you can then take it, I would say, you take things slowly. Don't rush and think you can do everything in an afternoon. Don't get me wrong. If you're savvy and you know what you're doing or used to it, you can sort of get a grip on a lot of the stuff in an afternoon, a day, a couple of days, if the timings are right. But for everyone else, I think just don't rush it. Just take that first step. Don't worry about the fact that you feel this is not going to make a difference. I can't do anything about it, because you can. It's installing that belief that you can do something. But yeah, it's a shame really that is the scary thing. I think for other people, one of the things that I guess, people you've spoken to before and people I've spoken to about, particularly in this kind of, the blogging sphere, the money blogging sphere, a lot of them have come from they've been on a journey where things have got so bad that they've had to do something. They really have. And they've done very, very well to get from that, and they've learned a lot. And I think they're fantastic examples to people that you can be bad with money, awful with money, and you can get out of it. But I guess where I'm trying to go and where you're trying to go as well, so we're trying to get people before they even get to that stage and make them realize that you can do this. It isn't as hard as it seems.
Yeah, I think it's probably our biggest challenge. I remember having a conversation with some friends at a meetup in London, I think last year, and somebody said, asked the question, just said, Look, I'm listening to you, Pete, because I'm interested in this stuff, and so is everybody who's here at this meetup. But how do we reach those who don't know that they need to listen, need to understand this stuff? And I have no answer for that, because you can't, unless you sort of kneel on people's chests and put headphones on them and sort of listen to this, or, make it somehow mandatory, I guess, at education level. But even then, you make something mandatory, a lot of people will sort of willingly resist it. But I don't know, I don't know whether you've come up with a perfect answer as to how we reach everybody in the country that needs to listen to this stuff. Have you?
Well, do you know what? I mean, it's about platforms a lot of the time. And that's why Martin Lewis has done so well, because, that ITV show is going from strength to strength. It's reaching so many people. And I think that does make a difference. So there's a lot of people who wouldn't ever have come across that world, and they're getting into it. I think one of the things you've got, though, and this is once you've got people to that stage where they're doing some of the things we're going to speak about in a minute, they're switching their bills, they're getting them with the right bank, they're putting the savings in the right place. What's next? And I think that is certainly the message in which I think people will need to work on over the coming years, is how we get the wider sort of planning for your future, for retirement, for all this kind of stuff, how you start making that a little bit more mainstream. So those people who've already been brought along the journey, they've got somewhere else to go, while at the same time still trying to get everybody else to catch up to that basic financial. I hate the word financial capability. That's what they use, don't they, in the kind of the terms. But I think it's that simple kind of confidence with the basic day-to-day household money as that first step.
Yeah,
build on.
Absolutely, confidence is an important word, isn't it? Because so many of us, when we start to think about this stuff, we realize that, we just know nothing. Our confidence disappears. It's like being chucked in the deep end when you can't swim, and you think, well, how on earth, where do I even start? I can barely, hold my breath here. So providing that kind of confidence, which comes through knowledge and empowerment and stuff like that, is so important. And I agree, Martin Lewis does a phenomenal job, as do you. And we're going to talk about the UK money bloggers community in a minute. But, once people have sort of set a budget, part of that, of course, will be identifying how much they're spending on utilities, food, all that sort of stuff, and fuel. So obviously, we hear a lot about switching utilities. I wonder, how much is there really to be gained from that? Is it pennies or is it pounds, and is it really a meaningful exercise these days with ever sort of increasing competition?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a message that people have heard so often. That they kind of feel, if they've not done it, what stopped them doing it? Because we shout so much about how much money. I mean, we're talking hundreds of pounds here. If you've never switched your energy provider, doing it will mean you save some money, because you are going to be on probably one of the big energy providers, probably on their variable rate tariff, which, although there's a price cap that's been introduced recently, it's a cap. So what happens are the energy providers put their top price at the level of the cap. So if you do go onto what's called a fixed deal, you can, as I say, potentially a couple of hundred, if not more. It depends, obviously, with these things. People get a bit confused because everyone's energy use is different. Mm-hmm. So that means that, if you use a lot of energy, your savings could be bigger. If you don't use a huge amount, maybe you don't have a gas central heating or anything like that as part of the building, whatever it might be, then your savings will be lower. But generally, most people, average household, you're looking at a couple of £100. And what's really vital here, the messaging here, it takes no time at all. Like I can do it in 10 minutes. Right. I can switch to energy. So if you work that out as an hourly rate for, say, a £200 annual saving, I mean, where else are you going to get that? And it's once a year. This isn't something you have to kind of be doing day in, day out. You don't have to understand kilowatts per hour. I don't get any of that stuff. You just need to go into a computer. Yeah. Go into a comparison site, put your stuff in, and there's a few misleading things in there. Yes, you might be worried about small energy companies going bust, what happens? But at the end of the day, all you're doing is you're changing your customer services. I mean, do you do it? Do you switch? Yeah,
whenever the deal comes up, obviously I get the notification. I sort of keep a note of when that is, and I always look around without fail.
And if you similar sort of, you made, I mean, obviously when you're already fixed, your savings are going to be smaller year on year, but do you still?
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's always worth doing. And yes, I almost always end up being a little bit better off. Not massive savings potentially, like you say, because I tend to fix for a couple of years and don't end up on the variable. But I mean, that's just habit, after doing it for years. I tend to be really skeptical, particularly of broadband changes, just because I've been with BT for years and I know they're not the cheapest, but I'm so dependent on it for work and play and everything that I'm just almost hesitant to. I think I'd rather just pay the money rather than go through the hassle and suddenly find out I'm completely without internet for 3 weeks or whatever, like happened to one of my colleagues here the other day.
Yeah, that's the difference thing is when you switch your internet provider, there's potentially going to be a little bit of downtime. So that is obviously a worry, and that sometimes bothers people. But with your other stuff, with your energy, with your water, well, you can't switch water, obviously, but with your energy, it doesn't get cut off, it carries on. So there's no risk of that. Your mobile phone, if you switch that, you might have a bit of time with no service, but we're talking a few hours pretty much. It's all it takes to port. That's if you're porting the number over. If you're just getting a new SIM with a new number, it's instantaneous. But you understand why people worry about that. But they neglect those bills. So broadband, mobile phones, people pay for more than they need. Yeah. Data. People think unlimited data. Oh, how amazing is that? Well, you don't need it.
No. Most of us will be less than 5 gig or something like that. I mean, but some of us way less. I think my wife uses about 500 megabytes a month. So she's on like the bog standard tariff because she just doesn't need anything else. Yeah, quite right. I wonder, is it like switching utilities has almost become a service, isn't it? Such is the mother of invention. People are switching more often. So something keeps showing up in my Facebook and Instagram feed. I think it's got to look after my bills or something like that. Yeah. And of course, then you've got like the all-in-one utility companies who tend to, offer, supposedly like one-stop shop, which I'm always slightly skeptical of. So, I mean, have you any sort of experience of either of those things, either the one-stop shop or the ones that do the switching for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're interested in these things. So the idea is like look after my bills, you're right. They were on Dragon's Den, I think, and that's the advert you probably see quite a lot pop up on social media. There are a few other ones out there as well. And the idea is that you give them your details, and if they find a cheaper deal, they'll just switch for you, which, I mean, it sounds fantastic, doesn't it? The positives are that the convenience, you don't have to worry about it at all. It will just keep going. The downsides are they might not have a relationship with every single provider. So the cheapest deal might not be available to you. And also you might not have, I think you can sort of say, no, don't go ahead with the switch, but they might want to move you to a company which perhaps has particularly poor customer service ratings. So really you've got to kind of put it down to kind of, are you willing to pay? You'll save less. So you're paying a little bit for the convenience of these services. Same with the all-in-ones. Yeah, you get everything together, and that might save you money compared to where you are now, but you're paying for that feature, that convenience. Personally, I mean, I know I'm weird, right? But I enjoy doing this. I enjoy looking at what's going on, doing these comparisons, and it helps me obviously when I'm talking to people about it as well. I don't mind doing it. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. If that's really the last thing on your list, if the reason it never happens is because you're always postponing it, you're always putting that thing off, then maybe, take a look at these things. And it makes it a lot easier.
Sure. It's one of the comments I get, obviously, the interest rates have been low forever. Now they're not really likely to go anywhere, I don't think, anytime soon. So people, wonder about how on earth can they maximize the returns they're getting on their savings. Is there any advice you can give people around that? Because it seems like a bit of a futile effort at the minute.
It's what some of the accounts are paying something so pitiful. I mean, if you're getting interest, it might be like 0.01%, something ridiculously low. If you just let it set in your ISA or your savings account or something like the one you've had for a long time. And that feels almost pointless. Even if you can get, I mean, right now, as we're talking, the best rate you can get on a decent sum of money is with an NSNI bond. You're looking at 1.16%, which in itself, I mean, if we just go back a year, that was, but that's where we are now, and who knows when things are going to get better. It feels a bit like, is there much point? But I mean, I know your audience as well. A lot of these people they're building their wealth. They've got some decent assets there, haven't they? And then you've got to get what you can for it. And it doesn't take long to go on, find what these best accounts are and move your money in there. And we're only talking about, to have that cash savings access. It's your emergency funds really, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people, you've got that flip side. Like you're saying, some people, they've got that money and they know what to do with it. If you've got a lot less than that, if we're talking people just starting on that savings journey, then you maybe want to look at a regular saver. where you can get maybe 2.75%, but you're only putting aside 250 quid, 300 quid a month, because that's all you've got. You're taking that out of your paycheck and you're saving it straight away to build up that emergency pot. They're the highest rates that are available, and they're great for that. But it's a frustrating thing, I know, for people. And it goes back to simplicity as well. I've got my money spread across lots of different high-paying current accounts, things over here, things over there, funneling things from accounts into regular savers. Some people don't want to faff around with that. It doesn't take much because standing orders, but some people, they go, right, I just want to put money in one place and leave it.
Yeah, understandable, isn't it, really? It's I was thinking, particularly with emergency fund and things like that, it really isn't about the rate. It's about having it there if you need it, isn't it? That's probably the more important thing. But it's tough at the minute. I think banking is changing, though, isn't it? It's, when you think about where we've come just with the open banking rules and that really starting to open up, I just wonder whether you had a view as to where sort of banking might be going as a service. At the same time, we've got some of the new challenger banks with some concerns about them. I better not mention them by name, but there is whenever there's innovation, there's concern as well. I just wonder whether you had a view on how banking as a service is going.
Yeah, I was going to mention by name there.
All right. You can. I'm just not sure whether I can.
Well, I mean, I think it's been like, if you're interested in banking, consumer banking like I am, again, I'm a little bit, we're money geeks, but I'm interested. I follow this. I've lost track. I think I've got 14 or 15 different current accounts, which is for different reasons, different things. Most people do not need that many bank accounts. But this kind of, like I said, this emergence of these sort of challenger banks has been quite interesting, quite exciting. I think they've brought across some really interesting features, which particularly people at the sort of the less kind of advanced stage in their kind of financial confidence can be really useful. So Monzo and Starling, the budgeting features they have are outstanding. Yes, they can really, really help you keep track of your money. And some of those open banking apps as well, which do a similar thing and aggregate your accounts, really, really, really good to help you do that, and extra bits and pieces with those as well. The older banks are trying to catch up. So they're offering some of these features now. And it's really interesting in terms of particularly Monzo. They have been struggling. Everything's been going on this year. It's affected everyone. Obviously, all the banks have been affected, but Monzo in particular, and I've seen this, particularly sort of videos I've done on my YouTube channel, a lot of people are very worried about the future of Monzo. And some people are taking their business elsewhere, which kind of defeats the purpose, because if you want these banks to survive and bring these innovations, you kind of, in fact, we need to push more of our regular banking, put our salary into these banks to make sure they have those funds. So it's a tough one to say how much this could be, they're going to get through this and they'll carry on, or whether the crisis that we're going through right now might eat them up and we go back to the standard banks. I don't really know the answer to that, but it's
interesting times, huh?
Yeah.
But you're right. People ask me all the time, how is there an app to sort of help me keep track of things? And I always say, well, like Monzo and, like you say, Starling, brilliant inbuilt tools as part of the banking thing. So I hope that they make it, and it's, like you say, if we like these things, we've got to support them. Now you founded, I think, the UK money bloggers community, shall we say, which is primarily based in a Facebook group, isn't it? How many are in that group now?
Oh, wow. We're about 300, 350 sort of people. The thing about the community, it does ebb and flow. People do this, they start this, they get excited about it, and they kind of disappear. So I think we've probably seen sort of 500 or so people come and go throughout the time, but I do a cull every now and again if people aren't active. Wow. So I think we've got about 300, 350 people who they've got a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, Instagram, those last two really, and we're podcast as well. People are starting during lockdown, they're starting to document their journey, and they're doing it on these channels, I think, more and more now than starting a blog, which just a year ago, 2 years ago, that's where people would have gone if they wanted to kind of talk about, money, their debt journey, or how to help people, or whatever it might be. Seeing loads of it right now on YouTube, Instagram in particular, and podcasts. I mean, a year ago, probably name half a dozen of us talking about money.
Yeah.
I would say we probably had about 20 launched in the last 6 months.
Yeah, which is encouraging. I think the more voices, the better, isn't it? And everybody will find somebody different who they connect and identify with, and we've all got slightly different tacks on it, which is good. What was the nudge to start a community, though, Andy? To sort of group us together. I include myself in that.
Yeah, because you're in the group as well, aren't you? Yeah, and you've won some awards in the past. You've won our podcast award in the past and things like that.
I have,
one of your many awards. So when I told you about, I left the BBC and I sort of started up on my own. I had no experience of this. I wasn't like some people who are always online and live in blogs, live on social media. That's not where I was. So I started building this up, and I found it quite sort of solitary. What a lot of people will probably be sort of experiencing right now, that move from full-time work to just being on your own. So I thought, well, there must be other people out there who do the same kind of thing. So I just sort of started it from there, sort of get us all together, see what we could do in terms of sharing our experiences in that blogging world, but also in terms of talking about money. And then also what I like to do, we don't do as much of this as I would like, partly because of time, but also, we've got our audiences, big or small, but together we actually have quite a big, powerful voice to try and do things. So try and do a little bit more sort of campaigning around certain issues. And the thing that we've done that's been most successful over the last 3 years, I think, so this year will be the 4th year, is a Christmassy thing. Is it too early to talk about Christmas?
It's fine.
It's basically called the reverse advent calendar. And the idea was we would get all our readers to, during the month of November, to put something into some food items into a box, which at the start of December is donated to a food bank. So, because that's the best time to do it. I know it's a bit early, but if you are thinking about it, don't leave it till Christmas Eve.
No, sure.
Do it earlier on. And this year, I think more than ever, people really are going to need this kind of support. But the lovely thing about it, I guess, is the fact that I could write about that, I could do that, and I could get some of my readers to do it. But when you've got, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people all writing about it, all talking about it, suddenly it gets a bit more traction, and then it goes to places you wouldn't even thought it would get. It get written up in the newspapers, it can be featured here and there on TV or things like that. So that kind of thing is a kind of, ultimately, I would like to do more of that, more campaigning as well as a collective.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, it's got to use the platforms we've been blessed with. You say that, during lockdown, more and more people have started documenting their journey. Most people, certainly if they've got any sense, wouldn't start a blog with the hope that it'll be their full-time job, because that's hard work, right? So what do you think they're getting out of it by documenting their journey?
Well, it's an interesting point there, actually. I do worry slightly about whether it's money blogging or fashion blogging or trying to be an influencer, as we say now, whatever it might be, whatever you're doing. I do worry about people who set off to do it as that's the way to escape the day job. That's going to make their fortune. Obviously, some people are able to make it their career. I feel very lucky that I've done that. It wasn't even deliberate. It just kind of accidentally happened. So I definitely, people here thinking, that sounds great, I want to do it. I think you're right. Go into it on the basis of it that you're going to enjoy it. You just want to kind of share your knowledge, share your experience, a creative outlet. I mean, look at us now, right? We are filming this, we are recording it for audio. There's going to be so many outlets that come from this, and we can just do that. I think it's amazing, that kind of creative content. Talking about coming from the BBC, when in my TV days, when you've got so many different lines of people signing things off and do this, do that. Don't get me wrong, it can help to have collaboration, have people, finessing things, but we could do what we want. It's great. And so people starting up a blog, a video channel, a podcast, just if you think you're going to enjoy doing it, just go for it. Just bear in mind, you've got to put the time in for it to kind of really break through. To
get any traction, yeah. One of my online heroes is Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a polarizing character. He's a little bit sweary. Actually, he's a very lot sweary. But he talks all the time about documenting. One of his sort of catchphrases is document, don't create. So in other words, don't necessarily go out to just create something for its own sake, but just document what you're doing. I get asked all the time about, folks saying, I want to become a financial planner, financial advisor. How might I do that? And so I've got a video that can help them with that. But I always say, when they email me or if I have a phone conversation with them, start writing or recording a podcast, or just setting up your smartphone and videoing yourself with your thoughts on every step along the way of that process. So if you're struggling with sitting in the exams and studying for them in your own time in the evening after you've been working all day, then document that and just sort of get it out there, not only for other people, but primarily for yourself, just as a record. It helps you think these things through. It helps you to codify your thoughts. One thing, writing a podcast and doing this for 10 years now, the podcast for 8 years, is you really do distill your thinking on things. It really does help you refine what you actually believe and think, so that you can be very clear about it. So I think it's good for that reason as well. So you would recommend that people do it? Because from my point of view, the more the merrier, right? Sometimes people say, I don't want to compete with you, Pete. I really wish you would, because the more voices, the better, really. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? I really hope that a lot of the people who have started stuff recently, whether they're doing it about money or whether they're doing it about their own passion, whatever it might be, are able to carry on. Because as we're getting that push now to get people back to work, people's time, if they're on furlough right now, and that doesn't mean they lose their job, if it means they actually go back to work or go back full time because they're part time, they'll have less time available to indulge in this stuff. And there's some fantastic things going on right now, really, really interesting stuff, ways of doing it. So I really hope that we don't suddenly see them do all this, build up their audiences, and then disappear. Because going back to what we said earlier, there are still so many people that we can reach to help them with their finances. And the more of us to do it, talking to different audiences, different styles, some people are going to be, they balance nicely together. So you can sort of, right, I'm going to listen to Pete and I'm going to listen to Andy's podcast, and they complement each other and I'll get a broader picture. But someone might want to go, listen, I want to go and listen to, you've got Kia doing Pennies to Pound, which is a great podcast for sort of young millennials. You've got some stuff which can be much more sort of heavily focused. Damien, who you've had on the show as well, with Money to the Masses, has his sort of market updates and things like that. There's a really broad mix of people out there. And I think, we've got the UK money bloggers. Maybe we just need to do something together as the podcasters, don't we? What can we maybe campaign together there and have something to really use our voices that way as well?
Good question. Podcasting is a powerful medium. And I think of all of them, still the least saturated, particularly here in the UK. There's lots of American money podcasts, but here in the UK, there's still not that many, more than there were, as you said. Consistency is everything, isn't it? I often say I wouldn't do this if I didn't absolutely love it. You said much the same thing at the beginning. It's amazing that I get to actually do this, and that I've got the freedom to do it with work and all that sort of stuff. So it's easy to be consistent when you enjoy it, but sometimes it's a slog still. Yeah. But those that succeed at this, by whatever definition of success, are the ones that sort of show up week in, week out and just keep going. Damien, Money to the Masses, was writing in the evenings for a couple of years, more than that probably, before he was able to jump ship and do it full time. Had Lynn Beattie, Mrs. Mummy Penny, on a couple of weeks ago, and she was the same. She was doing it, in the evenings and weekends for a while before she was able to do it full time. But you've got to show up to do that. Yeah, it's lots of opportunity. We live in an amazing time from that point of view. Just a last couple of questions, if I can, Andy. I wonder if you had a sort of favourite book, or to put it another way, if you could recommend one book on personal finance, what would that be?
Well, obviously, there's your outstanding book, Pete.
Oh, bless you.
No, but it's great. I mean, it is a really lovely book. I do generally talk about competitors, but I think of us all as a collective group as well. And it's always nice to see what other people are doing and celebrate when they do it well. And I genuinely think if your listeners haven't already checked out your book, then they should. I know that sounds a little bit fanboy, but I'm happy with that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I wasn't expecting that at all. Most listeners will know that generally my answer to that is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, which is the book I wish I'd written. I'm pleased with what I did write, but I wish I'd written that one when alive. And Jim Collins on the show a year or so ago, and what a joy he was. Amazing guy. And probably, I think, my most downloaded episode. Perhaps no surprise there with his celebrity draw. What about YouTube, man? I don't know about you. I spend my life on YouTube. I've got various favourite YouTubers, not necessarily personal finance related. I just wondered if you had a sort of guilty pleasure on YouTube.
Do you know, YouTube is something which I've had a channel since I started back in 2013. And talk about the podcast consistency is exactly the same with YouTube. So I've been sort of up in my game in the last sort of 12 months, and it's starting to, it's sort of showing in that traction. And we've got a lot more YouTubers recently joining the group, and I'm amazed how much they're able to watch. I struggle to listen to the podcast I want to watch the videos, watch the normal TV, do the work and all the hours around it and things.
Yeah.
It's so tough, isn't it? But I have a kind of, as a guilty pleasure, I do like to watch. Oh God, he's gone blank. His name, the Tonight Show with
Jimmy Fallon.
No, the other one.
Oh,
used to be on. Oh, gone blank.
Oh, James Corden. Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I think I love that. He's always enjoyed watching him. So every now and again, sort of go in and binge a few clips and interviews, and then forget about it for a month and go back and binge some more.
Interesting. I tend to watch YouTube in the bath, trying to avoid the mental picture. When they finally made the iPhone waterproof, I rejoiced because it meant I didn't have to prop up something on a chair by the side of the bath and then sort of wipe my hands every time I wanted to swipe. It was great. And then
I'm too scared to try that. I know it says it's waterproof, but I always worry about getting it wet. Even so, just something will go wrong. I know it.
Yeah. It's like, that crack. Yeah, I forgot I'd cracked my screen. That would that would mess up the waterproof nature of it. So yeah, I tend to watch YouTube in the bath, and then just while I'm sort of grabbing my salad at the desk, I tend to watch tech YouTubers and photographers and videographers. So Peter McKinnon, Peter Lindgren, who's a photographer and YouTuber. He's a new favorite, Matty Hapoya. And then when it comes to tech, I love iJustine, a little bit of a crush on iJustine, always have done. And MKBHD as well. These are the superstars of YouTube, really. But what's interesting with MKBHD is that his first video started showing up in my feed because they were exactly 10 years old, and he's like this 13-year-old boy or something, or 15, and it's amazing. And now he's an elite YouTuber with 12 million subs. What an interesting world we live in. Andy, it's good to chew the fat with you, man. And where can folks find out more about you and what you're up to, and just how to get in touch? Yeah,
so if you're listening to this on your podcasting app now, just sort of search for Cash Chats, and I'll pop up. In fact, we're probably in the related podcasts, but what people will listen to, we both appear in each other's related ones. You can find me there. The blog is becleverwithyourcash.com, and I'm on Twitter at AndyCleverCash.
Fantastic. I'll make sure, obviously, mate, that there's links to all that. And it's been great to just, kill some time and chew the fat with you, man. We're obviously of the same mind in many things. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you again to Andy for coming on the show and for having me on his show last week. Link in the show notes to that episode if you haven't caught it yet. Andy and I talk about the magic of paying yourself first, among other things. So it's a good conversation. Andy is an excellent interviewer, actually, much better than I am. So definitely check that out. There's a link in the notes. Okay, review titled Nothing Short of Life-Changing by Phil Wealth 123. It's high praise, Phil. Appreciate that. Pete delivers exceptional value week in, week out with a variety of topics. As a long-term wealth builder under the age of 20, I started off like a rabbit in the headlights when it came to finances. That was just over a year ago. I would now call myself financially literate to a degree. And the number one reason for that is Pete's wisdom. So I would say this podcast has changed what my future looks like and changed my attitude to money. Genuinely life-changing. Pete has even taken the time to reply to emails I've sent to clarify areas I'm unsure about. This podcast is a no-brainer. Make it part of your routine. Phil Wealth 123, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. And if you want to leave me a review, it really helps me out. meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes. Really should change that. It's not even called iTunes anymore. But anyway, for now, meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes, or wherever you're listening to this. If you can leave me a review, please do. It really, really helps me out. Okay. Now, just a quick call again for Meaningful Academy. There is now a permanent coupon code for podcast listeners. So if you're listening to me now, you get a special deal, essentially, on Meaningful Academy. Because, this podcast has done so much to help me in my career. And you guys listening to this, watching on YouTube, have been so supportive of everything that I'm building. So there's different discount levels depending on which phase of the academy we're talking about. So 25 quid off Financial Foundations, which is the starter phase, 75 quid off the Build Wealth phase. And there's a discount again if you opt into them both, and that's about £83. Give or take a few pence because the system works on percentages, not on pounds. And the coupon code that you simply need is PODCAST, literally just PODCAST. Enter that in the box on the registration page, and the site will automatically apply the discount. And yes, third phase of the academy is coming, retirement planning. As you know, I've been battling some health issues, nothing too major, but it's certainly put back the timeline on that. I'm working on it when I have the energy to. Don't have an ETA for you yet, but you can still register your interest. So click through from the homepage of Meaningful Academy, register your interest for Phase 3, retirement planning. Everything you need to know and do is at meaningfulacademy.com. Okay, next time I'm talking with Ken Okorafor of The Humble Penny, one of the most exciting UK YouTube channels and blogs dedicated to wealth building and FIRE. But I'm chatting with Ken about a subject far more important than money, so stay tuned for that next week. And that's it, folks, for this week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. Thank you again to Andy Webb for coming on the show and for having me on his show. All the links in the show notes, plus that's where to go if you have any questions or comments. meaningfulmoney.tv/session392. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Really appreciate your support. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.